By day, Augusta breathes calm and sunlight. By night, its quiet streets whisper the truth of unimaginable violence. A home soaked in betrayal where love turned lethal. A gas station floor scattered with shell casings and silence. A barbershop drenched in gunfire where trust bled away. Or a quiet street lit by flashing lights and shattered futures. Now, justice breathes through cold prison walls, yet peace remains unserved because no sentence can resurrect the voices buried beneath Augusta's stillness. And this is Inside Augusta's Most Dangerous Black Killers. Shocking murder and true crime documentary. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1, Davante Parks. Under Augusta's pale dawn, silence filled a house where innocence met, horror, and two small footprints told a story of blood. The murder of 27-year-old mother Laquana Lang on the 7th of September 2024 tore through the quiet of Hines Street. Her alleged boyfriend, 26-year-old Davante Parks, had recently been paroled after serving 8 years for a previous shooting. Just weeks after his release, he turned a family home into a crime scene that investigators would describe as one of the most distressing in recent memory. Around 4 a.m., neighbors heard arguing from the home. Moments later, gunfire broke the night. Parks fled, leaving Lang's 2 children, ages 2 and 5, alone with their mother's body for more than 4 hours. When police arrived, they found child-sized footprints in pools of blood. The 5-year-old told officers her stepfather had been fighting with her mother before the shots rang out. Lang was pronounced dead at 11:06 a.m., her body showing a gunshot wound to the upper torso. The tragedy deepened when authorities learned Parks had been released on parole less than 2 months earlier. In 2016, at age 18, he shot another woman, Brittany McKee, multiple times, wounding her arms, leg, and torso. Convicted of aggravated assault and weapons possession, Parks received 12 years in prison and 13 years of probation. He served 8 before being paroled in July 2024. His early release would soon prove fatal for another woman. After the shooting, investigators launched an intensive manhunt. Parks surrendered to the Richmond County Jail on September 8. Detectives confirmed he lived in the home where Lang was murdered, though the weapon used was never recovered. He was charged with murder, 2 counts of cruelty to children, possession of a firearm during a felony, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. The investigation centered on the children's testimony and forensic evidence collected inside the home. Blood patterns, footprints, and trajectory analysis established the sequence of events. Detectives documented the evidence, linking Parks to the crime scene beyond question. On the 27th of June, 2025, after a brief deliberation, a Richmond County jury found Davante Parks guilty on all counts: malice murder, felony murder, cruelty to children, and weapons charges. Senior Superior Court Judge Daniel Craig sentenced him to life in prison plus 75 years. The courtroom fell silent as the sentence was read, closing a chapter of violence that began almost a decade earlier. Reaction from the community was sharp but restrained. Brittany McKee, Parks' first known shooting victim, said she was never notified of his parole release, calling the system's failure a slap in my face. The district attorney described the case as a nightmare for Augusta, urging reform in victim notification. 3 lessons endure. Justice delayed leaves danger alive. Broken systems can cost innocent lives, and violence ignored once will return stronger. In Augusta's morning light, 2 children's footprints remain a silent testament to love lost, warning that safety requires vigilance even after justice is done. Before moving on, if this truth hits you, press hype stand with the forgotten, amplify justice, and make sure silence never buries the voices of the lost. Number 2, Tyrossale Peak. Under Augusta's quiet winter light, a home that should have sheltered love instead concealed neglect so severe it bordered on horror. The death of 82-year-old Lily Sapp exposed one of Georgia's most shocking elder abuse cases. A tragedy that unfolded inside her daughter's home on Rollingwood Drive. Her caregiver, 54-year-old Tyrossale Peak, was charged with felony murder and 2 counts of elder neglect after investigators discovered the elderly woman in conditions so inhumane that officers described the scene as unforgettable. On the 30th of December 2024, Richmond County deputies arrived at Peak's residence for a welfare check. The smell hit them before they stepped through the door, a stench of bodily fluids, infection, and decay. Inside, the kitchen teemed with roaches and piles of unwashed dishes. In a dark bedroom, officers found Lily Sapp lying motionless on a mattress, so filthy it had fused to her skin. Her body weighed barely 80 pounds, her bones visible through open sores that had gone untreated for months. Investigators learned that Sapp had once been under hospice care, but was removed by her daughter in June, with no further medical oversight. For over 6 months, Sap received no professional treatment. Peak claimed she fed her mother every morning and gave her nutritional drinks, insisting Sap was fine. Yet responders said the elderly woman was incoherent, severely dehydrated, and surrounded by bedding soaked with waste. Firefighters had to cut a section of the mattress away just to free her. Sap was rushed to Wellstar MCG Health Hospital in Augusta. Despite emergency treatment, doctors found advanced infections spreading through her lungs and bones. After 3 weeks in medical care, she died on the 21st of January 2025. Autopsy results confirmed that malnutrition, dehydration, and untreated pressure wounds led directly to her death. The investigation focused on Peak's decision to remove her mother from hospice care without arranging medical follow-up. Detectives documented the home's conditions with photographs and obtained testimony from paramedics, hospice workers, and neighbors. Prosecutors argued that the neglect was prolonged and deliberate. On the 10th of July 2025, a Richmond County grand jury indicted Tyrossale Peak for felony murder and 2 counts of elder neglect. She was arrested days later and arraigned in court that same week. Her bond was set at $11,200. If convicted of felony neglect alone, she faces up to 20 years in prison and a $50,000 fine. The maximum sentence for felony murder has not yet been determined, as the case remains pending. The community's reaction was muted but somber. Law enforcement officials described the discovery as disturbing beyond measure, urging vigilance in reporting elder neglect. Advocates for senior care called the case a wake-up call for reform and family-based caregiving oversight. 3 lessons remain. Neglect can kill as surely as violence. Love without responsibility breeds cruelty. And oversight must protect those who cannot protect themselves. In Augusta's stillness, one home stands as proof that silence can wound deeper than any weapon, and justice begins when someone finally opens the door. Number 3. Jeffrey Taiwan Eutsay. Under the late October sun in Augusta, a quiet gas station parking lot became the scene of something unthinkable. The murder of 70-year-old Charlie Creech, a homeless man found dead behind a Chevron on Laney Walker Boulevard, exposed a brutal reality of life on the streets. Investigators quickly identified the suspect as 43-year-old Jeffrey Taiwan Eutsay, himself recently paroled after serving time for stabbing years earlier. The discovery, just steps from a busy intersection, would soon draw both fear and outrage across the city. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. The crime scene was immediately cordoned off. Investigators from the Richmond County Sheriff's Office worked with Augusta University Police to review nearby surveillance footage. Video from a nearby camera captured Eutsay collecting leaves shortly before returning to the area where the body was later found. Detectives also noted the proximity to Payne College and coordinated with campus police to ensure safety in the neighborhood as word of the killing spread. Less than 24 hours later, on the 8th of October 2025, deputies located and arrested Jeffrey Taiwan Eutsay at approximately 11:15 a.m. He was taken into custody without incident and transported to the Richmond County Jail, where he was formally charged with murder. As investigators pieced together Eutsay's background, a troubling history emerged. Records showed he had been released on parole just 1 month earlier, on September 5, after serving part of a 10-year sentence for a 2018 aggravated assault involving a stabbing at another gas station. The timing of his release and the new murder charge raised questions about the parole system's oversight of high-risk offenders. The Richmond County Coroner's Office later confirmed that Creech died from blunt force trauma to the head. Forensic teams collected physical evidence, including debris from the scene and biological samples sent for analysis. Authorities declined to disclose the murder weapon but confirmed it was likely an improvised blunt object. Eutsay remains in custody, charged with murder and awaiting further court proceedings. No trial or sentencing details have yet been made public. Officials say the case underscores a growing concern about violence involving homeless residents and recently released offenders. Community reaction was swift but measured. Augusta University increased patrols and installed new AI-based security cameras around campus to reassure students after the nearby killing. 3 lessons remain. Untreated cycles of violence often return. Societies forgotten are the easiest to harm, and every act of justice begins by protecting those most invisible. In Augusta's afternoon stillness, a patch of leaves behind a gas station remains a grim memorial to one man's silent end. Number 4. 5 EA gang members. Under the warm spring air of Augusta, the sound of laughter near a swimming pool turned into gunfire that silenced everything. The death of 28-year-old property manager Cameron Mason on the 22nd of May 2025 shattered a quiet evening at MacArthur Park Apartments. Authorities say Mason was simply doing his job, protecting private property, when a confrontation with 5 suspected members of the Extort Anybody street gang escalated into deadly violence. The incident not only took his life but reignited state efforts against organized gang crime across Georgia. That night, Mason confronted a group of individuals attempting to access the apartment pool after hours. The group was not authorized to be there. Witnesses later described a heated argument that turned chaotic within seconds. 2 of the men pulled handguns and opened fire on Mason. He returned fire in self-defense, striking one of the suspects, Cameron Barber Harris, in the leg. Mason collapsed near the pool area, mortally wounded by multiple rounds. Emergency responders pronounced him dead at the scene. The gunfire endangered more than just one man. Stray bullets struck nearby apartments, including one occupied by a mother and her young child, and damaged vehicles parked in the lot. Investigators collected shell casings from several calibers, later matching them to weapons tied to gang members under the local faction Extort Anybody, affiliated with Loyalty Over Everything. Detectives from the Richmond County Sheriff's Office, with assistance from the Georgia Attorney General's Gang Prosecution Unit, conducted a detailed investigation. Surveillance footage and witness statements helped identify the suspects: Cameron Barber Harris, Tyler Preston, Christopher Morton, Zemer Dent, and Deontae Douglas, all residents of Augusta. Investigators also recovered marijuana, digital scales, and firearms during related searches, linking the suspects to broader gang activity. On the 12th of August 2025, the Georgia Attorney General's Gang Prosecution Unit presented the findings to a Richmond County grand jury. The panel returned a sweeping indictment formally announced 6 days later. Harris and Preston faced the most severe counts, including malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, cruelty to children, criminal damage to property, and 8 violations of the Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act. Morton, Dent, and Douglas were charged with related gang crimes, tampering with evidence, and possession with intent to distribute marijuana. Prosecutors allege the group attempted to conceal the murder weapon following the shooting. As of the most recent updates, all 5 defendants remain in custody pending trial. No verdicts or sentencing outcomes have been released. Mason's family, grieving the loss of a young father, called the murder senseless. Sheriff Eugene Brantley and Attorney General Chris Carr vowed continued enforcement against gangs, reaffirming that such violence will not be tolerated in Georgia. 3 lessons remain. Vigilance turns tragedy into reform. Gang loyalty destroys more lives than it protects. And justice's reach must extend to every corner where fear hides. In Augusta's fading light, the pool where laughter once echoed now stands silent, its ripples carrying the memory of a man who died doing his duty. Number 5. Shawn Antonio Walker. Under the late spring sun of Augusta, a simple neighborhood dispute over a parking space ended in unimaginable tragedy. The fatal shooting of 29-year-old Shaniqua Latoria LaFavre on the 22nd of May 2023 shocked an already violence-weary community. LaFavre, approximately 7 months pregnant, was killed. Investigators later identified the gunman as 44-year-old Shawn Antonio Walker, a convicted felon with a long record of violence. The confrontation that took 2 lives began with an argument that should have ended in words, but instead erupted in gunfire. Deputies from the Richmond County Sheriff's Office were called to the 200 block of East Taylor Street shortly after midnight following reports of multiple shots fired. When officers arrived, they found LaFavre dead at the scene. 2 others, a man identified as her fiancé and an 11-year-old child, had also been shot but survived. Witnesses described chaos as bullets tore through the quiet street, leaving blood, broken glass, and cries for help. The shooter fled before police arrived. Within days, investigators issued warrants for Walker's arrest, charging him with murder, aggravated assault, and weapons offenses. But despite immediate identification, months passed without his capture. The victim's sister, frustrated by the lack of updates, took to social media, posting Walker's photo and demanding justice. Her public campaign gained attention and renewed pressure on law enforcement. In July 2024, the sheriff's office formally named Walker as a wanted fugitive. The manhunt stretched into the following year. On the 29th of January 2025, the Southeastern U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force located Walker hiding in a house on Watkins Street. When deputies surrounded the property, Walker initially refused to surrender, forcing authorities to call in the SWAT team. After tense negotiations involving his mother, officers convinced him to exit peacefully. He was taken into custody without resistance and booked into the Richmond County Jail on charges of murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault, and illegal possession of a firearm. Investigators soon uncovered Walker's violent past. His record spanned decades, shooting into cars and homes, pistol whipping victims, and repeated assaults. Several outstanding warrants dated back years, including one for a 2019 shooting and another pending indictment from 2018. Authorities suggested that systemic delays in serving those warrants may have indirectly allowed the tragedy to happen. District Attorney investigators spent months preparing for trial, even traveling across state lines to secure witnesses. On the 30th of May 2025, a Richmond County jury found Shawn Antonio Walker guilty on all counts. He remains in custody, awaiting formal sentencing. LaFavor's family, dressed in white, described their grief as unbearable but said justice had finally spoken. Community leaders called her death a reminder of how easily senseless violence steals futures and families. 3 lessons remain. Every argument can become fatal when weapons replace reason, justice delayed risks more loss, and peace begins where accountability never wavers. In Augusta's quiet streets, balloons once rose in her memory, floating reminders of 2 lives lost and the voices they left behind. Number 6. Marquise Harris, Kazarie Middleton, and Cortez Berry. Under the dim afternoon light of Augusta, 2 lives were cut short inside a barbershop where trust once felt safe. The double murder at Johnson's Beauty and Barber Salon on the 23rd of November 2020 marked one of Harrisburg's most chilling crimes. 48-year-old barber Miguel Freeman and 34-year-old customer Wyman K. Scott were both gunned down in what prosecutors described as a planned armed robbery gone violently wrong. 3 men, Kazarie Middleton, Cortez Berry, and Marquise Harris, were soon identified as suspects. At approximately 2:18 p.m., deputies responded to the Eve Street business after a passerby found the bodies inside. Evidence later revealed both victims were shot multiple times, with shell casings from a 9mm and a .380 caliber weapon scattered near the chairs. Investigators determined that Freeman and Scott had been caught in an ambush meant to secure tens of thousands of dollars. Surveillance footage from nearby buildings captured 3 men arriving in a vehicle before 2 entered the barbershop. Moments later, gunfire erupted. The driver, later identified as Marquise Harris, stayed outside in the getaway car. He told detectives that he heard several shots before the others returned, panicked, and demanded to be driven away. Investigators learned that one of the gunmen, 26-year-old Cortez Berry, had been paroled just 3 months earlier after serving time for robbery and carjacking. Witness accounts and footage from security cameras allowed detectives to trace the suspect's car. A traffic stop revealed a .380 handgun hidden beneath the driver's seat, one of the weapons later matched to the murders. By mid-December 2020, all 3 men were in custody. Harris confessed to his role as driver and said the plan to rob the barbershop originated with Berry. He claimed they believed Freeman had cash stored at the shop. The Richmond County Sheriff's Office coordinated with forensic analysts to link the shell casings, fingerprints, and recovered weapon to the suspects. The case quickly moved toward indictment. Nearly 4 years later, in May 2024, the trial of Berry and Middleton began. Assistant District Attorneys Justin Mullis and Drakevius Huff presented detailed evidence, including ballistic reports and Harris' recorded statement. The jury deliberated less than a day before finding both men guilty on all 9 counts, including malice murder, felony murder, and attempted armed robbery. Judge Amanda Heath handed down the maximum sentence, allowed 2 consecutive life terms without parole for each man. Berry received 2 additional 5-year firearm sentences, while Middleton received the same, plus a concurrent 10-year sentence for possession of stolen property. Harris is expected to plead guilty in a later proceeding. District Attorney Jared Williams called the verdict a stand against senseless gun violence and a message that Augusta would not tolerate organized crime. 3 lessons remain. Greed disguised as desperation often ends in ruin, justice may move slowly but arrives, and communities endure when truth prevails over fear. In the silence of the barbershop, 2 empty chairs remain, monuments to lives lost in a moment of reckless violence. Number 7. Jamary Isaiah Brown. Under Savannah's gray December sky, one violent act of revenge turned a neighborhood dispute into a tragedy that stunned Georgia. The murder that unfolded on the 6th of December 2021, inside the Chatham City Apartments in Garden City, began with a long brewing feud. The victim, Amarian Robinson, was shot multiple times by Jamary Isaiah Brown after a personal dispute involving Brown's family. Prosecutors later described the act as a calculated retaliation, planned and executed after weeks of tension. Police were called to the apartment complex just after 6 p.m., following reports of heavy gunfire. Officers found Robinson suffering from numerous gunshot wounds near the courtyard area. Emergency medical teams transported him to a local hospital, but he did not survive. The crime scene was chaotic, with over a dozen shell casings scattered across the pavement, evidence pointing to a close-range shooting. Witnesses described hearing rapid gunfire and seeing a man flee toward the rear of the complex. Detectives from the Garden City Police Department immediately launched a homicide investigation, supported by the Chatham County District Attorney's Office. Within hours, they identified Jamary Isaiah Brown as the primary suspect based on witness statements and surveillance footage. After 4 days on the run, Brown surrendered voluntarily and was booked into the Chatham County Detention Center without incident. During the investigation, prosecutors uncovered that the killing stemmed from an earlier altercation several weeks prior, where the victim had assaulted Brown's brother. Authorities said Brown sought to avenge that incident. Evidence recovered from the scene included ballistic material and digital data placing Brown in the area before and after the shooting. Prosecutors argued that the attack was neither spontaneous nor provoked, but an intentional act of vengeance carried out with deadly precision. When the case went to trial in late 2024, Assistant District Attorney Casey Blount presented the sequence of events leading up to the shooting. The prosecution detailed Brown's history of prior disciplinary problems and defiance of court orders. The defense requested leniency, citing a difficult upbringing and emotional instability, but jurors were not persuaded. In November 2024, the Chatham County jury found Brown guilty on all counts, including malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, aggravated assault, cruelty to another person, and 3 firearm-related offenses. On the 11th of February 2025, Judge Stokes sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, along with an additional 25 years for aggravated assault and weapons charges. He is currently serving his sentence under state custody. In the courtroom, the victim's family described the pain of losing a loved one to senseless violence. Judge Stokes reminded both families that no sentence could undo what had already been done, and that the consequences of one violent decision would ripple through generations. 3 lessons remain. Retaliation guarantees nothing but destruction. A single impulsive act can define an entire life. And justice, while slow, always arrives for those left behind. In Savannah's quiet evening air, echoes of that gunfire still linger, a stark reminder of how anger can turn fatal. Number 8. Shawn Deontae Dukes. Under the glare of a Sunday afternoon sun, an ordinary gas station visit in North Augusta turned into a scene of chaos, blood, and irreversible loss. The events unfolded on the 26th of October 2025 at the Sprint gas station on Edgefield Road. What began as a routine day for customers became a deadly armed robbery that left 2 people dead and an entire community stunned. The suspect was identified as 21-year-old Shawn Deontae Dukes of Garfield, Georgia. The victims, 76-year-old Jewel Harden of Hepzibah and 33-year-old Thomas B. Lilly Jr. of Williston, were both shot and killed near the front counter. At approximately 2:05 p.m., emergency dispatch received frantic calls reporting gunfire and a possible robbery in progress. Responding officers from the North Augusta Department of Public Safety arrived within minutes. Body and dash camera footage later confirmed what officers saw. Dukes, wearing a light red shirt, was walking near a burgundy Toyota Camry, holding an AR-style rifle. When Corporal D. Givens and fellow officers shouted commands for him to drop the weapon, Dukes allegedly turned and aimed it toward them. In that split second, Givens fired, striking him and ending the confrontation. Officers moved quickly to secure the scene. Inside the store, they found 2 victims fatally shot near the register, surrounded by shattered glass and scattered shell casings. Store employees had barricaded themselves inside a back office until officers cleared the area. Paramedics arrived shortly after to treat Dukes, who was transported under police supervision to Wellstar MCG Health in Augusta for treatment. During the investigation, authorities uncovered that Dukes' own relatives had contacted law enforcement earlier that day, expressing concern after he reportedly told them he was going to kill someone. Detectives also found that Dukes had a prior criminal history in Georgia, including a 2023 arrest for reckless conduct and battery after he shot 2 pedestrians with Orbeez pellets from a moving car. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED, assumed control of the case due to the officer-involved shooting. SLED agents processed the gas station, collecting forensic evidence, shell casings, and surveillance footage. The AR-style rifle, a 223/5 56 American Tactical Alpha Max 6, was recovered at the scene. No officers or bystanders were injured during the confrontation, and Corporal Givens was placed on administrative leave, standard procedure pending the investigation of his use of force. After being discharged from the hospital on the 10th of November 2025, Dukes was transferred to the Aiken County Detention Center. SLED formally charged him with 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of possessing a weapon during a violent crime, and 1 count of pointing and presenting a firearm. A judge later denied bond, noting that the seriousness of the offenses warranted detention until trial. 3 lessons remain. Warnings ignored can turn into tragedy. Every weapon in the wrong hands becomes a public threat, and decisive police response prevents greater loss. On Edgefield Road, the gas pumps run as usual again, but the memory of that afternoon lingers like a shadow that will never fade. Dark streets. Broken trust. Justice crawling through blood and silence. These are the stories Augusta wishes it could forget but can't. Every crime leaves behind a question that never dies: how close are we to the next one? And if this journey through Augusta's most dangerous minds gripped you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to Justice Reversed and hit the notification bell to uncover the next real story before the world does. Because the truth doesn't wait, and neither should you.